Good evening. If you are joining us, it is Monday night at 7 p.m. You are with the CARES for having our Monday night expert sessions. It's a series where we invite experts in the field of addiction and recovery to share their knowledge with our community. If this is your first time here, whether in person or online, we'd like to let you know that the CARES program stands for Communities and Relatives Empowered for Support. And the support is for individuals struggling with substance abuse. So one thing to keep in mind is if you have a family member that is struggling in addiction, if you have someone that you love and care about, and you're wondering, what do I do next? This is the program for you. Our goal is to create a community where we can share education, share information, build support through a network, and then also provide resources to answer the question of where do I go next? Who do I talk to when I need services? It's a beautiful program, and we're operating here in Lakeway. We're very grateful to our partner here, Cornerstone Church, ATX, here in Lakeway, that has been generous of hosting this space for us. And again, we're here online and in person weekly on Monday nights. And it is a privilege here to be joined by Dr. Kasey Claborn, who comes with a great amount of experience. I'm going to read her bio here, and you're going to understand exactly why we are so fortunate to have her here. Dr. Kasey Claborn is a research scientist and licensed clinical psychologist. She's an associate professor in the School of Social Work, UT Austin. And Dr. Claborn is the director for the Addiction Research Institute and also serves as co-director for the South-Southwest Addiction Technology Transfer Center. Dr. Claborn received her PhD in clinical psychology from Oklahoma State University and completed her clinical internship at the University of Florida Health Sciences Center. She also completed her postdoctoral fellowship at Brown University Center for Alcohol and Addiction Studies, where she cross-trained in HIV and addictive behaviors at the Alcohol Research Center on HIV. She is internationally recognized, awards for her work in overdose prevention and in digital health. Dr. Claborn has been the principal investigator for several projects funded by the National Institutes of Health, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and the Health Resources and Services Administration. And just to be very clear, how incredible her research is. To date, she has received over $17 million in external funding for her research. Dr. Claborn's research focuses on improving the addiction system of care. And how? It's through community-based participatory research methods and systems science. Additionally, Dr. Claborn serves as a subject matter expert in multiple opioid litigation cases, and she regularly advises on matters related to improving the health information and technology infrastructure, both for mental health and substance use treatment. This represents the second talk in a four-part series under the theme, Understanding Someone Going Through Addiction. So it is a privilege to have you here, Dr. Kasey Claborn. The format will be basically just a conversation, and whatever Dr. Claborn you would like to bring forward here, we'll talk. There's going to be people in the audience that are taking notes, and at a certain point we'll open up the microphones for Q&A, so please be ready with questions. When you have an expert here present, they are ready to answer questions for you. So again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Renee. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Well, I'm handing over the microphone, metaphorically speaking, so tell us, when it comes to understanding addiction, I guess the most basic question is, what's something that you feel most people don't often hear or know about addiction in their family members or loved ones?
Yeah, great question. I actually posed this exact question to my freshman class at the University of Texas this morning. And I asked them, I was like, what is one myth associated with addiction that you guys wish everybody knew that we don't know? And most of them said, well, what we learned last week is that addiction isn't linear, that it's really complicated, it's complex, and it's not a linear process towards recovery. And so, I think when we're talking about addiction, and we're talking about substance use disorder, one thing that I hear pretty frequently is that, people, they think their loved one can just change. If you love me enough, why don't you just stop? And when we start to truly understand the foundation of addiction and what addiction is, that's the definition of addiction, is losing control. You can't
And that's actually something that we've heard a lot of speakers and a lot of people in the community really resonate with that. The idea of why can't you change? Why can't you stop? These patterns, they kind of happen through generations. So in your research and your experience, what do you notice about the intergenerational connections there?
Yeah, I mean, when we, oh man, talk about a tough question.
Sorry.
When we start teasing apart addiction, we like to think about it from this biopsychosocial spiritual model. And so it's not just about your genetic predisposition towards developing an addiction. That's one component. Mm-hmm. Your gender is also a component, your personality characteristics, but your family, your culture, your social life, all of those play into whether or not you develop an addiction, how severe the addiction is, the likelihood of recovery from addiction. And so when we're thinking about the family process in this intergenerational transmission, I guess you could say, of addiction, just because you have a direct family member who has an addiction doesn't mean that you will also have one, but you are much more likely to develop a substance use disorder as a result of having that family link. But we also have to take into account family trauma because whenever an individual with a substance use disorder in a family is struggling, that's traumatic for the whole family. We know addiction is not just a disease of the individual person, it's a disease of the family as well. And that's traumatic. And so you're not just inheriting that genetic predisposition, you're also inheriting all of the trauma that has come with the substance use disorder in the family. And so when we're thinking about recovery, we also, and especially in the context of families, we have to address the trauma that the families have experienced.
Oftentimes when there's an identified individual, we're talking about treatment options, we're talking about so much focus about trying to get them help. And when you're talking about this intergenerational trauma and that the whole family is experiencing this, is it your experience that there's a lot of resources for the family member?
No, unfortunately not. Honestly, I think historically families have been left out of the picture. When we think about the addiction system of care, oftentimes we don't recommend family treatment. We don't include the family as part of the recovery process. I think that's becoming more and more available, but historically it hasn't been. And we recommend people go to Al-Anon or Nar-Anon, which is basically a 12-step program for families. But we don't have evidence-based treatments that are specifically targeted for family members who are also struggling. So, things that I hear pretty frequently from family members: how do I talk to my loved one? Mm-hmm. How do I forgive them? How do I move forward? How do I parent when the parenting is inconsistent, when my partner has a substance use disorder? All of these components are factors that we need to take into account what the family has, that we need to actually address from a therapeutic perspective.
So we've got a.
Actually, I have a cover on the live stream, but there is a challenge with your microphone.
Oh no.
We were tested.
Sorry.
Everyone out here is probably realizing it's not. This is live. I love it.
Shout out to Dylan, who is amazing at helping us out with all this, so thank you.
Give us the change we desire.
Testing? Oh, not yet.
I still have muted.
And would you like us to pick up where we are, or just start from?
You can go as far back as you feel comfortable.
Okay. How do you feel?
I can just talk, talk to me, I'll talk.
Okay. Okay.
Test.
Testing. Is that better? Maybe? No?
Should I go with a hand mic?
Okay, now try.
Testing, testing. No.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Significant. Okay. Okay.
All right, testing. Oh, there it is.
Hey, all right. Sounding good to you guys? Okay, great.
There you go.
So if it's okay, take it after the bio and go straight into the very first question. Okay, good. Then
Okay,
take
we'll
two.
take it from the top.
All right, good evening, everyone. If you're joining us, we're in the CARES Program Expert Speaker Series. It's Monday night, and every Monday night at 7 o'clock, we host experts that come share this stage, generally provided here by Cornerstone Church ATX here in Lakeway. And the purpose of it is to provide knowledge and education to the community. The CARES program stands for Communities and Relatives Empowered for Support, and the support is for individuals struggling with substance misuse. So the idea is that if you are a family member or a loved one and you have someone that is struggling with addiction, this is your community. This is your space. This is a space where we provide the education, provide support through the network that you see here, and also resources through actual interventions and spaces that you can go for additional help. And I'm very happy to be joined here by Dr. Kasey Claborn, who comes in with great experience and knowledge. And I'm going to jump in real quick here. Dr. Claborn, you are the director to the Addiction Institute. You have this experience working with families as a clinical psychologist. Tell us what most families don't hear that they should be hearing about addiction.
Yeah, you know, I think one of the things that in my experience working with loved ones of people struggling with addiction is that they often blame themselves. There's so much shame associated from a family perspective with a loved one who is struggling with substance use disorder. And I'll give you, I was actually listening to a podcast earlier this week, and let me see if I can get the quote right. But she was talking about how, you know, for breast cancer, we go to people's houses and we give them casseroles. But when you have to take your child to a 90-day rehab, what do? It's too taboo. We don't bring casseroles. It's silence. Family members are often met with silence. And so, you know, I think addressing shame with family members is something that we don't talk about in addiction research. We don't talk about in addiction treatment. But it's something that really isolates family members, and having that community. We know that, you know, the opposite of addiction is connection, and having that connection, having that community is critical not only for the person who's struggling with a substance use disorder, but also for the family who's recovering as well.
And for the family that's recovering, I mean, there's a lot of resources that we hear about in terms of interventions for the person struggling in addiction.
Mm-hmm.
But where's the support or intervention or treatment for the family members? How's that looking?
Yeah, you know, I would love to see more funding and more resources go towards developing clinical trials and evidence-based treatments for family members and for concerned significant others and for loved ones. You know, we have some programs that have evidence-based treatment like CRAFT, community reinforcement and family therapy, but they're really geared towards teaching family members how to help motivate their loved ones to go into treatment. We don't have any evidence-based treatments that are really designed and targeted to support the well-being of loved ones and concerned significant others. And if we think about in the state of Texas, 1 in 4 people know someone who has died of an overdose. 1 in 4. In Texas, that's insane. And if we think about substance use more broadly, every single person is impacted by substance use, but yet we don't have resources and treatment that goes towards supporting our communities. And so we really need, in my opinion, recovery inclusive communities, which is pretty exciting what the CARES program is doing. I feel like you guys are starting to create that recovery inclusive community, which is great.
So when you talk about recovery inclusive community, what should we be aspiring for as the CARES community? what should we be building in that would work and really help the community?
You know, from my perspective, I think shame is one of the, and stigma are barriers for both treatment access for individuals going into substance use treatment, for families knowing what to do. And so having programs that really are designed to address shame and that suffering that comes with it and the guilt that comes with it, but building community, building activities where we're teaching people what addiction really is, and that, you know, you can't just stop using. Once somebody's developed an addiction, you can't just stop. They lose control. That's the definition of addiction. And I think when family members and loved ones start to understand the brain changes and the neurochemistry of addiction and what that really looks like, it actually kind of takes away some of that shame, because then you start to see it more as a disease and a medical condition, even though it's so much more than just a medical condition. But it reduces the blame. And I think that's something that I would recommend that recovery inclusive communities really start to focus on, because that's a huge foundational issue in our culture.
And what would you say to a family member that's out there and says, I want to help my loved one, and I am scared that if I don't do this, that they won't be around for next week, whether that thing may be bailing them out or providing support again. I mean, they sometimes debate what's the right choice. How would you advise family members that are stuck in that space?
You know, that's a very complicated question. And without knowing like a specific situation, it's hard to give a blanket level of advice. But kind of the way I approach it is it's always about kindness and compassion. We know for a fact interventions do not work. No matter how much HBO and Dr. Phil tells you that interventions are the way to go, they're not. Lots of science has shown that. And so, you know, when we approach family members, when you're struggling, when you're in the midst of addiction and you're struggling with substance use, you're not proud of it. You know it's a problem. You may not be willing to admit it, but you know deep down. And when somebody comes to you, when a loved one comes to you, and they express concern, and they show love, and they show kindness and empathy and compassion, that goes a very long way. And it may not be this time when you approach me. It may be a year from now when you approach me. But as you show me kindness and as you show me compassion, then you're putting coins in the bank. And as that bank gets more full, when I'm ready and I'm motivated for treatment, then I'm going to know I can come to you, because you're going to have that compassion and empathy.
And Dr. Claborn, we've got messages for the family member that is in the middle of this, but what about those that are around the family members? Maybe friends who want to provide support, who mean well, but might say, I really don't know what to tell the person that's suffering, the mother or even the daughter who is suffering there. What do people who are not related, what could they offer in terms of support?
When you're not in that circle, and especially when it's spiraling and you're in the midst of like just trying to pull someone up who's struggling with addiction, when you're on the outside of that circle, it's really hard to know what to do and what to say. And to be honest, there's never a right thing to say. But silence isn't the key. And I think that's the thing that we struggle with, is most of the time in the space of substance use and in the space of addiction, family members are confronted with silence or with taboo or judgment from their neighbors, from their friends. And so what I would say to the members of the outside circle, bring the casserole. Bring that casserole. You don't have to say anything. Just bring the casserole, say I love you, and I'm here for you. That's it. We just need community and we need connection.
That's powerful. I think we hear a lot of people struggle getting past shame, reaching out to people maybe that they've known for years to say, my son, my daughter, my spouse, a parent even. And so to have people that you can connect with and build relationships with, what would you advise to these larger communities, whether it's churches, schools, spaces where maybe our focus has always been on a different goal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what are good ways for those communities to not miss what's happening if people are quietly holding on to shame?
Ways to not miss what's happening. It's really easy when we're talking about these stigmatized conditions like addiction to look the other way, or to just not want to go there. I think churches I hope this is not the University of Texas opinion. This is Dr. Kasey Claborn's personal opinion. I personally think churches in our society, they are the foundation for which we can really help to destigmatize and reduce a lot of the shame associated with substance use and serve families. Our goal as a church is to serve the community and to serve others and to serve family members. And churches have a unique position in our culture and in society where we have a lot of trust embedded and we have a lot of power to influence people. And when you start to have these conversations like we're having tonight that help people understand and know exactly what addiction is, help people know how to not just be aware of addiction, but how to communicate with other people, and then also have very targeted strategies within our church organizations, within our schools, within our community organizations who are serving people as well. When we start to build these recovery inclusive communities, that's where we start to change addiction. And it's no longer about being afraid to talk about it. It's like knowing, okay, you probably have had a substance use disorder. You probably know someone with a substance use. You probably have somebody who's experienced an overdose. We all have. We've all been there. And so it's a matter of not hiding in the darkness, not hiding in our secrets. Our secrets hold power, unfortunately. And within the addiction space, it's pretty secretive. And so churches can really shed a light within that space by opening up the doors, reducing shame, reducing stigma, and developing these recovery inclusive communities.
And we're going to open up for questions here from the audience in a second here. But I wanted to ask, and this, hopefully this isn't like too of a heavy question here, but sometimes we have families that say there's mixed values, or faith may be a big part of their life, but it may not be part of the child's life or a parent's life.
Yep.
And so that becomes a complicated kind of cross-section of identity and support. How do you navigate in those spaces where there's a community of support, but values may be different, or generations could be different?
Absolutely. Yeah, I run into this all the time. And I think, it's really important to understand when we're talking about addiction, there's no right way. There are multiple pathways to recovery. Some people need substance use treatment. Some people are good with AA or NA. Other people have to be completely abstinent in order to transition into recovery. A lot of people, so I come from a philosophy of a model that's called the biopsychosocial spiritual model. And I think, and spirituality is not the same thing as religion. And so I think no matter what, when we're thinking about spirituality and addiction recovery, having a purpose is critical towards recovery. That's one of even SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, defines recovery. One of the 4 dimensions is having a purpose and recreating that in somebody's life after they've experienced addiction. And so the spiritual side is important towards facilitating recovery. But I do think you have to be sensitive to the spiritual beliefs of the individual with an addiction. You can't force religion on them. You can't force your beliefs on them, because oftentimes that's kind of like intervening, and that creates a lot of dissension. But you can have open conversations. And so I think, it really requires, from my perspective, checking your heart and your motivations. And you can still speak your beliefs into their lives, but do so from a level of humility and being more willing to listen to their perspective instead of forcing your perspective on them. Does that answer your question?
That does. It sounds like there's an invitation that's
Exactly.
laid out there. And we've had, in fact, our previous speaker talked about timing. So it's interesting that there's great overlap. It's consistency between these experts that have been sharing, which is really about timing and giving space there. And so I have tons of questions, and I got to remind myself that there are lots of questions out here in this room. So again, if you have questions, we're going to open this up in a second, but tell us a little bit too about your organization, Anchor Point Wellness. What is the purpose of your organization? Where do you aim to make change?
Yeah, so I started an organization actually last month. It hasn't officially opened its doors yet. It will open its doors in October, which is very exciting. We're 2 weeks away. And it's called Anchor Point Wellness. And Anchor Point has been something I've been dreaming about for 10 years. I used to live in Rhode Island. I remember sitting in Rhode Island dreaming of one day owning this company that would help to build recovery inclusive communities. And the idea behind Anchor Point Wellness and why now is the right time is because I just finished a really large project where we worked over the entire state of Texas doing overdose prevention and listening to loved ones and families. And throughout the last 7 years, I've had so many family members email me, call me, come up to me after I give talks, and they're like, Kasey, what do I do? Can you give me resources? Can you help me? And I don't have anything good to point them to. You know, I do my best. I give them recommendations for a couple of books and a few websites, but there's nothing great out there. There's nothing that I, as a clinical psychologist and as a scientist, would say, this is where you go. This is the place. And so I decided to build that this year. And so I wanted Anchor Point to anchor hope in the community and to be geared towards loved ones, towards families, but also to equip churches, to equip schools, to be able to build these recovery inclusive communities and sustain them long term.
And Dr. Claborn, that's a phrase I want to connect with. Recovery inclusive communities.
Yeah.
What does that mean, and what's the vision for what that could look like?
Yeah, so to me, a recovery inclusive community is where I can walk into a Starbucks, I can walk into anywhere, and I can talk openly about my family members struggling with substance use. I can go to you, Renee, and, well, I can go to you anyways, and I'm not worried about being stigmatized, but I could go to my primary care provider and talk about substance use. I mean, how many of you guys, when you go to your primary care provider and they ask you about all of your health behaviors, you're 100% honest all of the time? Probably none of us. And so, you know, because there's shame and because there's stigma attached with that. And so a recovery inclusive community is a community where we understand this is something that is prevalent within our society. We're there to support them and connect them to resources. But more importantly, it's equipping churches, it's equipping schools with actual recovery blueprints. So it's handing them a recovery blueprint and saying, here's exactly how you implement a recovery inclusive community, and here's the strategies to maintain it, and then here's the training. Here's how I'm going to train your leadership and how to do it, and here's how we train your staff, and then you train them so they train their congregations, they train their students if it's a school. And so then we start to shift the culture around substance use here in the United States.
That's fantastic. Well, we are excited to be a part of that vision, and we are so excited too that it sounds like breaking news. We've got this service, it's opening. An agency's opening in 2 weeks. So with your permission, would it be okay if we list you as a resource on our website?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
So one of the things that we are striving here is building that community that you're talking about, making sure that people are connected, but also providing resources so that if people want to learn more, that they can go to places like your agency and organization to learn more on that. So we are not done for the night, because this is the part where we transition to the questions in the room. And we're going to have a microphone floating around, and for those online, please feel free to submit questions wherever you can, and we'll also bring those questions back. So So we're going to leave space for about 3 or 4 questions here, and we're going to keep the live stream going here. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, and a microphone will go. Just quick reminder, remember that we are streaming live, so if at all possible, we'll avoid any names, a loved one or a friend, as just a great stand-in for their name. So.
Thank you for sharing tonight. It's been great. Could I get you to role play, like how to be kind? If you're in a very, oh, they did it again, and not taking it personal and not walking on eggshells, how to have boundaries but not be cranky.
Sure. Can you give me like a scenario, and we can act it out?
We've cleared the house out of all the substance of choice.
Okay.
And I come home, and the substance of choice is back and being used.
Oh man, I'm getting put on the spot.
Like, I want to know, how would I not say what
So
my anger would want to say?
I was about to say, so for me personally, in a situation like that, and for most people, we're going to be enraged. And that's a natural reaction. What I would do in that scenario is not say a word at that moment.
Okay.
Because you need to calm down. You need to regulate your emotions. Personally, I would probably walk out of the room, and I would do deep breathing. Because when you breathe deeply, your brain automatically calms down. It has to. It's just the physical response. It has to. And so as soon as you start to breathe deeply and your body starts to calm down, then you're going to be able to think more clearly. I would say, if we're approaching this from trying to be kind and compassionate, obviously we don't want to, continue enabling and things like that. But if we're being kind and compassionate in that, we can't do that when we're angry and we're enraged. It's just, it's just hard. And so calming down is the first step. But then when we're addressing it, I like to ask questions. I like to be curious and inquisitive. And so, it's hard to know exactly what to say without the specific situation, but just imagining a situation, I would probably say, you know what, Cindy, I know we've been talking a lot about your substance use, and we had made an agreement that you wouldn't bring the marijuana back in the house, and we've cleared everything out of the house. This is a substance-free zone, and so this is a boundary that I'm setting. If you're going to live under my house, this is a boundary that I'm going to set. And so what do you think we should do in this situation? And I like to put it back on them because, number one, it allows you to listen to them. And you get to hear their perspective instead of you drawing the line in the sand and saying, this is my house, you're under my rules. But it's giving them a little bit of autonomy and ownership. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to do what they say, but you're listening to them. And it starts to kind of reduce that power differential, and it starts to create that empathy and that compassion. And then, but in a very calm manner, and this may be 3 days later. It may not be the same night that you come home, because it may take that long to calm down. Then in that conversation, say, okay, so reflect back to them. Here's what I heard you say. Here are my concerns, and here's my rules. And we will stay. And if these rules don't happen, here are the consequences. And make sure you enforce those consequences. You have to be consistent. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, that was awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the microphone's going around for other questions.
I don't really know how to phrase this, but you mentioned earlier with like the family and the culture, with the addiction, they're much more likely to be linked or have that addiction because of the generational curse, I guess you can say. If that's a constant factor and those family members are always in the bubble and the person is having trouble staying away from the alcohol because of those. How would you suggest separating the person from the problem from the person?
Yeah, so this is something that in therapy I talk a lot about, and you literally just nailed it. It's separating the person from the behavior. And I think as family members, a lot of times when, we see our loved ones just doing behaviors that, manipulating, lying, disobeying rules for the house, things like that, stealing. And you come to them and you just think, well, if you loved me, you would change for me. So we take it personal. And I think that's one of the big things with addiction is and it's so hard, it's so extraordinarily hard, but we can't take it personal. And so you have to start naming that. And so this is what I like to tell people is when we're separating the person from the behavior, name that behavior. So name it. So, okay, her addiction is causing this behavior. This is the addiction speaking. This is not Cindy speaking. This is the addiction speaking. And it helps to kind of depersonalize it from that person. And so it helps you to have a little bit more compassion and understanding. Does that answer your question? I don't think I got at the family aspect.
No, I think I should have rephrased it. I think I'm just going to, for layman terms, when you have a spouse who is struggling and the people that are involved, like the parents that are involved genetically, are still in the picture, and they're constantly bringing that into the home.
That the
into the
substance, the
Yeah,
drug.
it's like, how do you separate the person from that?
So you want to be careful not to isolate them from their support system. But you can set boundaries. And so, it's a matter of figuring out what boundaries work best for you and for your partner. And so maybe that is, we don't go to their house. We always invite them to our house, or we go somewhere where we go to the coffee shop where there's no alcohol. We go to the park. And we're going to have a boundary that I will set with my in-laws that if they want to be around us right now, because he's struggling with alcohol use disorder, the boundary is that we don't have alcohol. We don't have that temptation around. We don't have the alcohol around. And so, and it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about when, and this happens all the time, if the in-laws violate that boundary, then that's an important conversation we have to have. So, okay, well, we have, can you help me understand why you continue to bring alcohol around when you know your son is struggling and he's really trying to transition into recovery, and this is so hard for him. Can you help me help him by not bringing it around? And when you say it like that, and then when you ask questions to understand, well, can you help me understand why you continue to do this? Then it makes them actually think about it instead of get defensive. Thank you.
We have time for one more question.
Thanks, Dr. Claborn. That was really good. And one question I had, you mentioned something that we heard last week about, you said something about helping people find purpose to get them on the way to recovery. And last week we heard something similar. Can you give some examples of that? I mean, somebody who's really far down the path, and maybe it's with alcohol addiction and where they maybe have lost purpose. Maybe what are some steps or things you can do that could help them redefine purpose in their life and get on the path?
Yeah, for sure. So if you think about severe addiction, so if you have somebody with an alcohol use disorder and once your brain has flipped, I like to call it the flip, when your brain transitions from hazardous use, so just repeatedly misusing, to actual addiction and dependence, then you lose that control. And what your purpose then becomes, unfortunately for many people struggling with addiction, is, okay, I wake up and I'm thinking about, where am I going to get my alcohol? Where am I going to get it today? Okay, I have to do this meeting and this meeting, and I have to do this, and then I'm going to drink at this time. Oh, I'm not going to have alcohol there. Where do I find? Your entire purpose then becomes that substance. You're just preoccupied all the time with that substance. And as you start to spiral, as addiction becomes worse and worse, you lose things that are meaningful to you. It may be relationships, it may be hobbies and recreational activities, it may be your job, lots of different things. And over time, you kind of lose what the meaning of life was. You lose that purpose. And when we're working towards recovery, finding a purpose is important again. That purpose might be building trust with my kids again. That purpose may, for other people, be volunteering at AA meetings, becoming a sponsor. Those are examples of through the recovery process, starting to rebuild that purpose. And the purpose during the recovery, it may start out pretty small. It may literally be, my purpose today is to get through today without a drink. That's my purpose in life. And then you get through today, you get through the next day. Okay, my purpose today is to repair this relationship. Okay, we're 3 months down the road. You know what? I think I'm going to start volunteering. I'm going to start volunteering for the CARES program. I'm going to start doing this. And over time, that purpose begins to build. And the more purpose you have, the more positive things you bring into your life, and the stronger your recovery is.
Well, we're going to close with that. And for those online, just know that this video is going to be online on our website, which is carescommunity.us. So please feel free to explore. We also have videos of our previous speakers. This is our fall series, so we're going to continue this. We're going to have 2 more speakers under this theme, but we've got 2 other themes that we're going to be covering. So keep coming back. Our schedule is going to be updating. We've got speakers lined up through December. And also we encourage you that if you are in the Lakeway area, to come find us and spend time with us. Come chat in person. So again, we're going to close the online streaming portion, but we're still going to be live in the house here. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. Also, Dr. Claborn, what websites, links, where can they go if they want to hear more?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to hear more, I just started an Instagram account where I'll be sharing the science and heart of addiction and recovery. So you can go to @dr.Kasey Claborn, and that's on Instagram. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. And then we have our Anchor Point website, www.anchor-point-wellness.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us and sharing your experience and knowledge. It is greatly appreciated, and we appreciate the impact that you're having on this community here. So thank you.
Thanks, Renee.
And for the rest of us, again, I'll just close up with our line that's become kind of our mantra as we close up. If this is your first time here, whether online or in person, we just want to say a simple message. Welcome home. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you next Monday at